Now I know that you did Six Gumbas and a Wannabe, plus you also did Golden Ladder here.
Right.
In the early 2000s, it was 2001, 2002. But
Right.
you have a long history with the Players Theater from back in the 90s when
Yeah.
you were teaching acting, right?
Yeah, I still teach acting. I have the TGW acting studio. I was looking for a space to teach, and, someone had told me about this place. I think Vinny Pastore, the actor Vinny Pastore,
Yeah.
he was one of my first students.
Wow.
In fact, I became a teacher, because Vinny owned a bar. Before he became an actor, he owned a bar up in Westchester called the White Horse Tavern. No, Crazy Horse Tavern. And he hired my band to play. And he had my poster from American Buffalo, which I did around the corner at the old Circle in the Square with Al Pachino. Yeah. So he had my poster in his office. And he's like, hey, come downstairs, I want you to see something. So he paid us like $300, which was a fortune for a band back in 1982, believe me. And he said, tell me something. I got to get rid of this bar. This life has killed me. I want to be an actor. What do I got to do? I said, well, you have to study. And he said, would you teach me? And I said, okay. So he found this space, and he introduced me to Donald. And, of course, Vinny's a big star now. He's on Broadway and Bullets Over Broadway and Sopranos and everything. And Donald and I Donald was a character right out of a Charles Dickens novel. He was sort of always hunched over and thick glasses, severely impaired eyes, fragile, pale skin, but deeply sensitive, complexly intelligent, knew a great deal more than he ever let on, and had, serious feelings about the theater. And anybody that knows Shakespeare, he had to be, a special person. And so I taught upstairs on the 3rd floor, and Donald gave me part of his office to use as my office, which was very nice of him. It wasn't part of the deal. It was just like, here. Yeah. And he would listen to me teach. So we developed a relationship. And then I said to him, listen, I'm going to go away to Iowa to get my degree in writing. And he's like, that's really good. That's the way to do it. Go and study writing. Don't just write. Learn from teachers, from people that do it. So I didn't see him again for years and years, and then I came back in '99. And I was at a very low point in my personal life. I was going through a divorce, which was horrible. We're back together, which is a great part of the story. But at that moment, it was a really low point. And I couldn't get anything going. And Donald hired me as a writer. My first paying writing job. He hired me to adapt a play called McCare, which is a play by Robert Louis Stevenson. Robert Louis Stevenson wrote 4 plays, all of which failed miserably, and he said, I'm never going to be involved in this business. They were long melodramas, 4-act melodramas, very wordy, very difficult. Some of them, but brilliant writing, because, Robert Louis Stevenson was a great writer. So he hired me to adapt it and turn it into a musical comedy. Now, this thing had a dark ending. People got murdered. I mean, it was awful. And I came up with an idea. He and I came up with an idea. And it hinged upon the central character's love interest pretending to be a man. And we both hit upon this idea. Almost, I got to find a way. I can't remember the details, but I'm like, Donald, I got to find a way to make the story. And I'm really stuck. I got the first act is good, but I can't. She comes in, and she can't be her. And he said, so do you mean that she should disguise herself as a man? And we both cracked up laughing. And it was one of those rare moments in life when you're in sync with someone else to such a degree. So from then on, it sailed through. I did my 3 rewrites for him. And so we were in business with that. And I was renting space, starting my acting studio again. It was going very well. And then I brought a play to him, Six Gumbas and a Wannabe. And it was a big, huge hit. For a long time. He'd been working with Donna and telling her, you know, we're going to do it, we're going to do it. And of course, she wanted, you know, Dan Sullivan to direct it. And, you know, the likelihood of getting Dan Sullivan down here, you know, even 10 years ago was minimal. And so he interviewed a bunch of directors, and he chose me to direct Golden Ladder as well.
Was it Amy Redford was in Golden Ladder? That's Robert Redford's daughter.
Robert Redford sat in the 3rd row and went out across the street and had drinks with us afterwards.
Over at the Minetta Tavern?
Exactly.
Oh, that's great.
It was such fun.
Great.
He loved the play, Golden Ladder, by Donna Spector. He loved the play. The themes he felt that were stressed were very interesting, and he thought the production was really good and the performances were very good. Annie McGovern, who was in Six Gumbas and a Wannabe, was also in Golden Ladder. She played Amy's mother.
Oh, okay.
A wonderful actress. She got mentioned in the review in the New York Times for Six Gumbas, the striking redhead, which was great.
It seems like not that many people know Donald Goldman, but it seems like you have such a long relationship with him, and kind of, I feel like you have a better view on all the aspects of his personality, because he seems like he was very complex.
Yeah, there was much more to him than meets the eye. The first impression he wanted you to have was that he was an irascible malcontent. And he said to me point blank, I don't care what anything costs except for one thing. I have to negotiate it. I go, what do you mean? He goes, I believe in handling. So if something is $10, I'm going to try to get it for $8. I can afford $10, whatever the price was, but it's something I enjoy doing. So you can imagine what that's like as a director, going to everything that he didn't pay the crew. I mean, I was buying them dinner because they were all starving. You know, he had ways that were difficult to understand sometimes, and one couldn't tell always. But I think I mentioned to you upstairs, my daughter, Michaela Waits, was about 7 or 8. Well, she's 20 now, and that was, 12 years ago, 13 years ago. So, you know, she was a kid, and he changed completely when he met this little girl. And I think I had her give him a flower. I was trying to butter him up for something. I think it was to get the sound man that I wanted. He wouldn't pay for Dave Gilmore. And he's a genius sound man. I mean, if you have a good sound man, you can get away with almost anything. And she came in and she went, "This is for you." And he was. Color rushed to his face. He got up from behind his desk and he goes, "What's your name?" You know.
Said that you did American Buffalo down at the Old Circle in the Square, and I think at that time it seems like there were a lot of different theaters down here that really don't exist anymore, but I feel like the atmosphere of the Village is still so perfect.
So vibrant.
Yeah.
I mean, you can imagine. I'll never forget Pachino's face the day they opened the box office. It was right around this time of year. It was right around April that they opened the box office. We were rehearsing, and I think we started previews in May, so they opened the box office right around now. And there was a line to 6th Avenue, down to West 4th Street, and back down to Bleecker Street. And we come into rehearsal, and Al likes to rehearse later in the day. You know, he's a late sleeper. So we'd get here, you know, like 1, 2 in the afternoon, and we'd stay late. And he's standing there, and he doesn't want anyone to know, but he's like looking out the window, looking at this line. And I come in, I'm like, hey, Al. You had to call him Teach. That was his character's name. You couldn't say Al. He wouldn't look at you. He wouldn't acknowledge you. I go, hey, Teach, what's up? And he goes, did you see that line out there? Did you see that? We better get to work. And it's very interesting, his process. You sit in the set, and you play cards. American Buffalo. You sit in the set, you play cards. You talk about what you did last night. And, after you have pizza and coffee, all right, let's do a run-through. It's a very different way of working, But it was an extremely powerful performance. He came on stage, it was like you saw human electricity come to life. There was a deadly silence in an audience of 500 people in a arena thrust, and it was great. I mean, the 80s, the Village, every movie star in the world came down to see us. We met everybody, Baryshnikov, Paul Newman, Joanne Woodward, Carol O'Connor. Everybody in the business came to see that show. It was a fantastic calling card, and a great, great experience to work with someone so incredibly committed. You never met anyone so committed to his craft as Mr. Pachino. He is a true, the definition of an artist is he creates art. He creates, something beyond just what it is. Mm. And it was my idea that he do American Buffalo. Most people don't know that. And, I was doing Richard III with him, and we were in tryouts in Philadelphia. And I was playing Richmond, who, comes in and kills Richard and takes over the throne. And so I was leaving the show, and I said, by the way, this is the play you should be doing. And I put it on his dressing room table. And I walked out, and I thought, well, I'll never hear from this guy again. And then 6 months later, my agent called me and said, Pachino wants you to come over to his apartment and read this play, American Buffalo. And American Buffalo was not successful. They did it at Lincoln Center with John Savage and Kenny McMillan and Robert Duvall, and it didn't work. It was on the big, I think the Vivian Beaumont, and it didn't work because it was so far away. I think Ulu Grossbard directed it. Not his fault, but the play needed to be intimate. So sure enough, we did it at the Long Wharf. It was a big hit. And then we did it here, and he went on to do it for 4 or 5 more years.
Yeah. I think that's what I love about Off-Broadway, and, is that the audience is so close. You're a part of.
Yeah, you really are.
Really a part of the whole.
And you discover, I saw Laurie Metcalf here in a Lanford Wilson play. Can't remember the name of it. But you just saw this actress, and you went, this kid is like, she's going to be a major star. We are sitting in history. This is what people will come to recognize as a historical event. The space, people forget spaces.